Welcome to Infinite Business Dynamics. If you're preparing for the PMP exam, this video is designed to help you avoid the Scrum Master traps that catch even well-prepared candidates. We'll walk through 40 realistic exam scenarios, each revealing a common mistake, the correct PMI mindset, and the key Agile or Hybrid nuance behind the right answer. You'll learn when to coach instead of command, how to respect Scrum accountabilities, embrace change appropriately, focus on value over output, and apply servant leadership in real PMP exam situations. By the end of this video, you'll think like PMI expects, eliminate common distractors with confidence, and dramatically improve your ability to choose the best answer. Let's begin. Trap 1. The Mini Project Manager Trap. Here's a classic PMP exam trap. Imagine a construction project transitioning to Agile. Management asks the Scrum Master to create the project schedule, manage the budget, and report earned value metrics. This may sound reasonable, but these are not the Scrum Master's primary Scrum accountabilities. The Scrum Master establishes Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. They coach the team, facilitate Scrum events, remove impediments, and help the team continuously improve. If the organization still requires traditional project governance, such as schedule management, cost control, or earned value reporting, those responsibilities may remain with a project manager or another governance role. It depends on the organization's delivery model. The product owner remains accountable for maximizing product value. Many PMP candidates choose the wrong answer because they confuse the Scrum Master's servant leadership role with traditional project management responsibilities. Think like PMI. The Scrum Master enables effective Scrum and improves team performance. Governance responsibilities depend on the organization's delivery model. Memory tip: the Scrum Master enables delivery. Governance depends on the delivery model. Trap 2. The Task Assigner Trap. Here's another classic PMP exam trap. During sprint planning, the developers have selected 10 user stories for the sprint. They then turn to the Scrum Master and ask, who should work on each story? It might feel natural for the Scrum Master to assign tasks, but that's not how Scrum works. The developers are self-managing. They decide how to organize their work, who takes on which product backlog items, and how they'll achieve the sprint goal. The Scrum Master's responsibility is not to direct or assign work. Instead, they create an environment where the team can collaborate effectively, make decisions together, and continuously improve. If the team needs support, the Scrum Master can encourage practices such as collective ownership, pair programming, swarming, or cross-functional collaboration, but the final decision belongs to the developers. This is where many PMP candidates make a mistake. They confuse the Scrum Master with a traditional team lead or functional manager who distributes work and controls day-to-day assignments. Remember the PMI mindset. The Scrum Master facilitates the process. The developers manage the work. And here's an easy memory tip for the exam. Teams assign themselves. Scrum Masters enable the team. Trap 3. The Backlog Owner Trap. Here's another common PMP exam trap. Imagine the product owner is on vacation for 2 weeks. During that time, a key stakeholder requests an urgent change and insists that the product backlog be reordered immediately. The Scrum Master decides to reprioritize the backlog. At first glance, that may seem like a reasonable decision, but it's not consistent with Scrum. Under the Scrum Guide, the product owner is solely accountable for maximizing product value, and that includes managing and ordering the product backlog. The Scrum Master does not own the backlog and does not reprioritize product backlog items on behalf of the product owner. Instead, the Scrum Master should explain the product owner's accountability, document the stakeholder's request if appropriate, and facilitate communication once the product owner is available. If the organization has already designated an authorized delegate or acting product owner, that person, not the Scrum Master, would make backlog ordering decisions. Many PMP candidates make the mistake of assuming the Scrum Master has administrative authority over every Scrum artifact. That's incorrect. Remember the PMI mindset. The product owner owns the product backlog. The Scrum Master protects the Scrum framework and coaches the team, but does not take over product owner responsibilities. A simple exam memory tip is: product owner owns the backlog. Scrum Master coaches the process. Trap 4. The performance evaluator trap. Here's another trap that frequently appears on the PMP exam. Imagine a developer has been producing poor quality code for several sprints. Concerned about the situation, the functional manager asks the Scrum Master to prepare an official performance appraisal. Many candidates think the Scrum Master should evaluate the developer because they work closely with the team. But that's not the Scrum Master's role. In Scrum, the Scrum Master is a coach and facilitator, not a line manager. They have *** no administrative authority over hiring, promotions, salary decisions, disciplinary actions, or formal performance reviews. Instead, the Scrum Master should focus on helping the developer improve. They can coach the individual, encourage peer learning, promote engineering best practices, and facilitate conversations that strengthen quality and teamwork. If the functional manager needs input, the Scrum Master may provide objective, process-based observations, such as recurring quality issues, participation in Scrum events, or adherence to agreed ways of working. However, the *** formal performance evaluation remains the responsibility of the functional manager or human resources. This is where many PMP candidates get trapped. They confuse the Scrum Master's coaching responsibility with traditional line management authority. Remember the PMI mindset. A Scrum Master develops people through coaching, not through administrative appraisal. And here's an easy exam memory tip: coach performance. Don't rate performance. Trap 5. The sprint canceller trap. Here's another classic PMP exam trap. Imagine the team is halfway through a sprint when a critical dependency fails. As a result, achieving the sprint goal appears impossible. The Scrum Master immediately decides to cancel the sprint. That decision might seem logical, but it's not the Scrum Master's authority. According to the Scrum Guide, only the product owner has the authority to cancel a sprint, and even then, sprint cancellation is rare. It should be considered only when the sprint goal has become obsolete. For example, because of a major business change, a shift in market conditions, or a change in organizational direction. A technical problem or dependency failure doesn't automatically mean the sprint should be cancelled. Instead, the Scrum Master should facilitate discussions between the developers and the product owner, help remove impediments where possible, and explore alternatives. The team may adjust its plan, negotiate scope, or find another way to achieve the sprint goal. Many PMP candidates assume the Scrum Master can make major operational decisions because they protect the team. That's incorrect. Remember the PMI mindset. The Scrum Master facilitates the discussion. The product owner makes the decision about sprint cancellation. Here's an easy exam memory tip. Scrum Master advises. Product owner decides. Trap 6. The chief problem solver trap. Here's another trap that catches many PMP candidates. Imagine the development team encounters a major technical roadblock. The Scrum Master happens to be an expert software engineer, so they step in, write the code, and solve the problem themselves. While that may seem helpful, it's not the Scrum Master's primary responsibility. The Scrum Master's role is to enable the team to solve problems, not become the team's technical hero. Their focus is on removing impediments by facilitating collaboration, encouraging effective engineering practices, and ensuring the right people are involved. Instead of taking over, the Scrum Master might encourage pair programming, mob programming, collaborative design sessions, or bring in a technical subject matter expert if additional expertise is needed. Many PMP candidates misunderstand the phrase, remove impediments. They assume it means the Scrum Master personally fixes every technical issue. In reality, removing impediments means helping the team overcome obstacles without creating long-term dependency on the Scrum Master. Remember the PMI mindset. A Scrum Master builds team capability, not team dependency. And here's an easy exam memory tip. Facilitate the solution, don't become the solution. Trap 7. The meeting secretary trap. Here's another subtle PMP exam trap. After the sprint retrospective, the Scrum Master prepares detailed meeting minutes, action logs, and participant comments, then sends them to senior executives. That might sound like good governance, but it undermines one of Scrum's most important principles, psychological safety. The sprint retrospective is a private working session for the Scrum team. Its purpose is to inspect how the team worked during the sprint and identify practical improvements for the next one. To have honest conversations, team members need confidence that their discussions won't become management reports. The Scrum Master certainly facilitates the retrospective and may capture improvement actions for the team, but those actions belong to the Scrum team, not to executive reporting. If leadership requests an update, the Scrum Master should share only high-level process improvements or agreed outcomes, and only when appropriate and with the team's awareness. Individual comments, detailed discussions, and sensitive feedback should remain confidential. Many PMP candidates confuse the Scrum Master with a meeting administrator responsible for producing detailed corporate documentation. Remember the PMI mindset. The Scrum Master protects the team's environment for continuous improvement, not management's reporting needs. Here's an easy exam memory tip. Retrospectives improve the team, not management's files. Trap 8. The scope approver trap. Here's another classic PMP exam trap. Imagine that, halfway through the sprint, an influential stakeholder approaches the Scrum Master and says, "I'd like to add an important new feature. Can you approve it?" Because the Scrum Master is highly visible, many candidates assume they have the authority to approve or reject scope changes. But that's not how Scrum works. The Scrum Master is not responsible for product scope or feature approval. Those decisions belong to the product owner, who is accountable for maximizing product value and managing the product backlog. The Scrum Master's role is to facilitate communication, not make product decisions. They should direct the stakeholder to the product owner and help ensure the request is discussed through the appropriate Scrum process. If the product owner determines that the new feature provides greater value, they can work with the developers to assess its impact. Depending on the situation, the sprint backlog may be renegotiated while keeping the sprint goal intact, or the feature may be scheduled for a future sprint. Many PMP candidates fall into the trap of treating the Scrum Master as the project's approval authority. In reality, the Scrum Master protects the process, while the product owner owns product decisions. Remember the PMI mindset. The product owner owns product scope. The Scrum Master owns Scrum effectiveness. And here's an easy exam memory tip. Product owner decides what. Scrum Master enables how. Trap 9. The passive servant trap. Here's another mindset trap that often appears on the PMP exam. Imagine conflict within the Scrum team is escalating. Communication has broken down, collaboration is suffering, and team velocity is declining. Believing that servant leadership means staying out of the team's way, the Scrum Master decides not to intervene. That may sound respectful, but it's not servant leadership. Servant leadership is active, not passive. The Scrum Master is responsible for creating an environment where the team can collaborate effectively and continuously improve. When conflicts become unhealthy or begin affecting the team's ability to achieve the sprint goal, the Scrum Master should step in, not to dictate solutions, but to facilitate constructive dialogue, coach healthy conflict resolution, and restore psychological safety. They may use coaching techniques, facilitate difficult conversations, uncover the root causes of the conflict, and help the team establish better working agreements. Many PMP candidates mistakenly believe that servant leadership means avoiding difficult conversations or refusing to intervene. In reality, ignoring dysfunction is not empowerment, it is neglect. Remember the PMI mindset. Servant leaders don't control people, but they do actively remove barriers to collaboration and team effectiveness. Here's an easy exam memory tip. Servant leadership is active service, not passive observation. Trap 10. The command and control trap. Here's another classic PMP exam trap. Imagine the team's velocity has been declining over the last few sprints. Under pressure to meet delivery deadlines, the Scrum Master tells the developers to work overtime until productivity improves. At first glance, this may seem like decisive leadership, but it's the opposite of agile leadership. A Scrum Master does not motivate teams through pressure, command, or overtime. Instead, they help the team understand why performance is declining and coach them towards sustainable improvement. Rather than demanding longer hours, the Scrum Master facilitates discussions during the sprint retrospective to identify the root causes. Is technical debt slowing development? Are requirements unclear? Are dependencies, interruptions, or process inefficiencies affecting delivery? By addressing these underlying issues, the team can improve performance without sacrificing quality or burning out. Many PMP candidates fall back into traditional command and control thinking, especially when delivery pressure increases. However, Scrum is built on trust, self-management, and a sustainable pace. Short-term pressure may increase activity, but it rarely improves long-term performance. Remember the PMI mindset. A Scrum Master coaches the team to improve the system, not the symptoms. And here's an easy exam memory tip. Coach, don't command. Empower, don't enforce. Trap 11. The fix-it-all trap. Here's another common Scrum Master trap. Imagine the Scrum Master notices developers running into small operational issues throughout the day. Wanting to keep work moving quickly, they jump in and solve every problem personally. It may seem like excellent support, but over time, it creates a much bigger problem. A Scrum Master is not meant to become the team's personal problem solver. The goal is to help the team become increasingly self-managing and self-sufficient, not dependent on the Scrum Master for every obstacle. Instead of fixing every minor issue, the Scrum Master should coach the team to solve problems themselves, improve collaboration, and build practices that prevent the same issues from recurring. They should reserve their direct intervention for systemic impediments, those obstacles that the team cannot reasonably remove on its own. Many PMP candidates misunderstand the phrase, remove impediments. They assume it means solving every problem personally. In reality, effective Scrum Masters remove barriers by building capability, not by becoming indispensable. Remember the PMI mindset. A great Scrum Master measures success by how little the team depends on him, not by how many problems they solve personally. And here's an easy exam memory tip. Teach the team to solve problems, don't become the permanent solution. Trap 12. Here's another important Scrum Master mindset trap. Imagine that, halfway through a sprint, senior executives demand an urgent new feature. Wanting to avoid conflict with management, the Scrum Master immediately agrees and instructs the team to start working on it. That may seem cooperative, but it's not servant leadership. A Scrum Master serves both the organization and the Scrum team by protecting the integrity of Scrum. They should not bypass the product owner or compromise the sprint goals simply because the request comes from senior management. Instead, the Scrum Master should explain the impact of introducing new work during an active sprint. They should guide the request to the product owner, who is accountable for product decisions and backlog prioritization. If the new feature is truly more valuable, the product owner can evaluate its impact and decide the appropriate course of action. Many PMP candidates assume servant leadership means always saying yes to stakeholders. In reality, servant leadership requires the courage to say, not now, when a request threatens the team's focus, delivery, or the sprint goal. A Scrum Master protects the team's ability to deliver value, not by resisting stakeholders, but by ensuring that change follows the proper Scrum process. Remember the PMI mindset. Servant leaders protect the team through courage, coaching, and adherence to Scrum, not through automatic agreement. And here's an easy exam memory tip. Courage isn't saying yes to everyone, it's protecting the sprint when it matters. A common misconception is that a Scrum Master proves their value by stepping in and doing the work themselves. In this scenario, the Scrum Master takes over an engineering story to save the sprint. Although the intention is good, the action is not aligned with Scrum. A Scrum Master enables the team to succeed. They do not become an additional developer. Instead of becoming the hero, they facilitate a discussion with the product owner and developers, help remove systemic impediments, explore options such as replanning or rebalancing work, and protect the team's self-management. For the PMP exam, remember this principle. A Scrum Master creates capable teams, not dependent teams. The best Scrum Masters build long-term team capability, even when delivery pressure is high. They coach, facilitate, and remove obstacles, but they resist becoming the solution themselves. Memory tip: hero creates dependency, coach creates empowerment. Trap 14, the blind trust trap. Here's another subtle Scrum Master trap. Imagine the team consistently commits to more work than it can realistically complete. Sprint after sprint, several product backlog items are left unfinished. The Scrum Master notices the pattern but chooses not to intervene, believing that trusting the team means letting them make their own decisions. That may sound supportive, but it's not effective servant leadership. A Scrum Master certainly trusts the team's ability to self-manage. However, trust does not mean ignoring clear evidence that the planning process is not working. Instead, the Scrum Master should coach the team to use empirical data during sprint planning. Historical velocity, team capacity, planned absences, and previous sprint outcomes all provide valuable insights for making realistic commitments. If the team repeatedly overcommits, the Scrum Master should facilitate discussions to uncover the root cause. Is the work underestimated? Are priorities changing too frequently? Are hidden dependencies affecting delivery? By using data rather than assumptions, the team can improve both predictability and sustainable delivery. Many PMP candidates confuse trust with passivity. In Agile, trust is paired with transparency, inspection, and adaptation. The Scrum Master trusts the team while also coaching them to learn from evidence. Remember the PMI mindset. Trust the team, but use empirical data to continuously improve how the team plans and delivers. And here's an easy exam memory tip. Trust plus data leads to better commitments. Trap 15, the Agile Evangelist trap. Here's another important mindset trap for the PMP exam. Imagine senior leadership decides that a hybrid delivery approach would better suit the organization's needs. However, the Scrum Master insists that only pure Scrum is acceptable and refuses to support any variation. That may sound like protecting Agile, but it's actually dogmatism, not agility. One of the core principles of modern project management is tailoring. There is no single delivery approach that fits every project or every organization. The goal is not to follow a framework perfectly, but to deliver value effectively. A Scrum Master should understand the organization's context, constraints, and objectives. Instead of rejecting a hybrid approach outright, they should help design a delivery model that preserves key Agile principles while meeting governance, regulatory, or business requirements. Many PMP candidates make the mistake of believing that Agile means following Scrum exactly as written in every situation. In reality, Agile encourages adapting processes to maximize value while staying true to its underlying principles. Remember the PMI mindset. Tailor the framework to fit the project and the organization. Never sacrifice value simply to preserve methodology. And here's an easy exam memory tip. Fit the framework to the context. Don't force the context to fit the framework. Trap 16, the micromanager trap. Imagine a Scrum Master who constantly asks developers, "Are you done yet?" or requests hourly status updates on every task. At first glance, this may seem like good oversight, but in Scrum, it's actually a sign of command and control management, not servant leadership. The trap is confusing administrative monitoring with team accountability. Scrum teams are self-managing. Developers organize their own work and decide how to achieve the sprint goal. They don't need someone checking on them every hour. So, what should the Scrum Master do instead? Respect the team's self-management. Focus on removing impediments, coaching the team, and creating an environment where they can succeed. Progress should be visible naturally through the sprint board, daily Scrum, and burn-down chart, not through constant interruptions. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: trust the team. Remove blockers. Measure progress through Scrum artifacts, not by micromanaging people. That's the PMI answer every time. Trap 17. Status report daily. Imagine the Scrum Master starts the daily Scrum by calling each developer one by one. John, what did you finish yesterday? Sarah, what are you working on today? Mike, any blockers? Then the Scrum Master collects all the updates and prepares a report for management. This is not a daily Scrum. The daily Scrum is not a status meeting for the Scrum Master or for management. It is a planning event owned by the developers. Its purpose is for the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal, identify any adjustments needed, and coordinate their work for the next 24 hours. The Scrum Master's role is not to run roll call or collect status reports. Instead, they ensure the daily Scrum remains focused, time-boxed, and aligned with Scrum principles. If the meeting starts drifting into management reporting, the Scrum Master coaches the team back to its intended purpose. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. The daily Scrum is for team planning, not management reporting. Whenever you see a Scrum Master collecting individual status updates for management, that's a strong signal you've found the wrong Agile answer. Trap 18. Extend the sprint. Imagine the team is 3 days away from the end of the sprint, but several backlog items are still unfinished. To make sure everything gets completed, the Scrum Master decides to extend the sprint by another 5 days. That sounds practical, but it's the wrong Agile response. In Scrum, a sprint is a fixed time box. Once a sprint begins, its duration does not change. Extending the sprint delays feedback, reduces transparency, and makes velocity less predictable. If the team cannot complete everything, the solution is not to extend time. Instead, the developers collaborate with the product owner to re-evaluate the sprint backlog. Lower priority work can be removed or returned to the product backlog, while the team remains focused on achieving the sprint goal. The Scrum Master's responsibility is to protect the sprint time box, not change it. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: time is fixed. Scope is flexible. Whenever an exam question suggests extending a sprint to finish planned work, eliminate that option. PMI expects the sprint time box to remain fixed while scope is negotiated as needed. Trap 19. Sprint review as demo. Imagine the sprint review is approaching, and the Scrum Master spends hours preparing a polished 25-slide PowerPoint presentation. During the meeting, stakeholders quietly watch the slides, ask a few questions, and the session ends. It looks organized, but it's not a true sprint review. The sprint review is not a formal presentation or a status meeting. It is a collaborative working session where the Scrum team and stakeholders inspect the working product increment, discuss what has been achieved, gather feedback, and decide what should happen next. The most important artifact in the sprint review is not a slide deck, it's the working product. The Scrum Master facilitates collaboration and productive discussion, but the focus remains on inspecting the increment and adapting the product backlog based on stakeholder feedback. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: show the product. Gather feedback, adapt the backlog. Whenever an exam option turns the sprint review into a one-way presentation or management reporting session, it's almost certainly the wrong Agile answer. Trap 20. Skip retrospective. Imagine the sprint is ending, and the team is under intense pressure to deliver a release. The developers suggest skipping the sprint retrospective so they can gain 4 extra hours for coding. At first, that sounds productive, but it's actually the wrong Agile decision. The sprint retrospective is not an optional meeting. It is a mandatory Scrum event dedicated to continuous improvement. Every sprint is an opportunity to inspect how the team worked together and identify practical ways to become more effective. Skipping the retrospective may create a few extra hours today, but it often leads to repeating the same problems in future sprints. Without regular reflection, impediments remain unresolved, technical debt grows, and team performance gradually declines. The Scrum Master's responsibility is to protect the retrospective and foster an environment of continuous learning and improvement, even when delivery pressure is high. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: never sacrifice improvement for short-term output. Whenever an exam option suggests skipping the sprint retrospective to save time, eliminate it. PMI expects Scrum teams to preserve all Scrum events because continuous improvement is essential for sustainable delivery. Trap 21. Problem-solving daily. Imagine the daily Scrum begins on time. As the team discusses progress, two developers start debating the best database schema for a new feature. The discussion becomes increasingly technical, and before anyone notices, 12 of the 15 minutes have passed. This is not how the daily Scrum should be used. The daily Scrum is a short planning event, not a technical design workshop. Its purpose is for the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt their plan for the next 24 hours. When deeper technical discussions arise, the Scrum Master helps protect the time box by encouraging the relevant developers to continue the conversation immediately after the daily Scrum with only the people who need to be involved. The goal isn't to avoid problem solving, it's to move detailed problem solving to the appropriate time and place so the daily Scrum remains focused and effective. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: identify issues during the daily Scrum. Solve them afterward. Whenever an exam option turns the daily Scrum into a lengthy technical discussion or design meeting, eliminate it. PMI expects the daily Scrum to remain a focused, 15-minute planning event while deeper discussions happen separately. Trap 22. Stakeholder Daily Scrum. Imagine an influential project sponsor joins the daily Scrum and starts asking each developer for individual progress updates. Because the sponsor is important, the team allows the discussion to continue. That may seem respectful, but it's the wrong Scrum behavior. The daily Scrum is a planning event for the developers. Its purpose is for the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt their plan for the next 24 hours. Although stakeholders are welcome to collaborate with the Scrum team, they should not interrupt or redirect the daily Scrum. If their questions turn the event into a status meeting, the Scrum Master should politely protect the purpose of the daily Scrum and suggest discussing those topics afterward or during the sprint review. Transparency does not mean giving stakeholders control over the developer's daily planning. The Scrum Master serves both the team and the organization by maintaining healthy boundaries around Scrum events. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: protect the daily Scrum. Invite stakeholders to the sprint review. Whenever an exam question allows stakeholders to drive or interrupt the daily Scrum, eliminate that option. PMI expects the daily Scrum to remain a focused planning event owned by the developers. Trap 23. Sprint planning creep. Imagine the Scrum team is finishing sprint planning. Based on past velocity and team capacity, the developers have selected the work they believe they can complete. Just before the meeting ends, the product owner insists on adding 3 more high-priority product backlog items because they're important to the business. Should the developers simply accept them? No. In Scrum, the product owner decides what is most valuable, but the developers decide how much work they can realistically forecast for the sprint. The sprint backlog belongs to the developers, and their forecast should be based on actual capacity, historical velocity, and the sprint goal. Overloading the sprint may seem productive at first, but it usually leads to unfinished work, reduced quality, lower predictability, and team burnout. The Scrum Master's role is to facilitate realistic planning and protect the team's ability to make a sustainable forecast, not to pressure the team into accepting more work than they can reasonably complete. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: value is prioritized by the product owner. Capacity is determined by the developers. Whenever an exam option suggests that the product owner can force additional work into the sprint backlog during sprint planning, eliminate it. PMI expects the developers to own the sprint forecast and commit only to work they believe they can complete within the sprint. Trap 24. Refinement Ceremony. Imagine a Scrum Master schedules a mandatory 4-hour product backlog refinement meeting every Tuesday. Everyone must attend, regardless of whether refinement is actually needed. It may seem organized, but it's not how Scrum works. One of the most common misconceptions is treating product backlog refinement as a formal Scrum ceremony. It isn't. The Scrum Guide does not define backlog refinement as an official Scrum event. Instead, it describes refinement as an ongoing activity where the product owner and developers collaborate to break down, clarify, estimate, and reorder product backlog items so they are ready for future sprint planning. Refinement should happen continuously, in small, focused sessions whenever needed. It should never become a rigid, time-consuming meeting that interrupts the team's flow. The Scrum Master helps the team find an effective refinement approach, but does not impose a fixed ceremony or schedule. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. Refinement is an ongoing activity, not an official Scrum event. Whenever an exam option describes product backlog refinement as a mandatory ceremony with fixed duration or attendance, eliminate it. PMI expects refinement to be collaborative, lightweight, and continuous, supporting the product backlog without becoming another formal Scrum event. Trap 25. Backlog meddling. Imagine the sprint is already underway. A critical blocker suddenly appears, and without consulting the team, the Scrum Master tells one developer to stop their current work and immediately switch to the new task. At first, this may seem like decisive leadership, but it's not Scrum. The Scrum Master does not assign work to developers. Scrum teams are self-managing, which means the developers decide who works on what and how to organize their work to achieve the sprint goal. If priorities change or a blocker threatens sprint progress, the Scrum Master's role is to coach the team, facilitate discussion, and help remove impediments, not direct individual task assignments. The developers inspect the situation, collaborate, and decide how to replan their work while remaining focused on the sprint goal. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: coach the team. Don't manage the team. Whenever an exam option shows the Scrum Master assigning work, reallocating developers, or directing individual tasks, eliminate it. PMI expects the developers to own task allocation while the Scrum Master protects self-management and removes impediments. Trap 26. Accepting non-done work. Imagine the sprint review has begun. The team demonstrates a new feature that appears to work, but one developer admits that the required unit tests haven't been completed yet, even though they're part of the team's definition of done. Should the feature still be accepted? No. In Scrum, working software alone is not enough. An increment is considered complete only when it fully satisfies the team's definition of done. If any required quality criteria are missing, such as testing, documentation, security checks, or code review, the work is not done. Presenting incomplete work as if it were finished creates false transparency, reduces product quality, and undermines stakeholder trust. Instead, incomplete work remains incomplete. It is returned to the product backlog for future consideration, while only work that fully meets the definition of done is presented as a completed increment. The Scrum Master helps the team protect quality standards and ensures the definition of done is consistently applied. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset: working is not done. Done means meeting the definition of done. Whenever an exam option accepts partially completed work because it mostly works, or is almost finished, eliminate it. PMI expects every increment presented as complete to fully satisfy the definition of done. Trap 27. No product goal. Imagine a Scrum team has a product backlog containing more than 200 product backlog items. Every sprint, they simply pick the next highest priority items and start working. When asked what the product is ultimately trying to achieve, no one can answer. This is not effective Scrum. The product backlog is not just a prioritized to-do list. Every product backlog item should contribute toward a clear product goal, a long-term objective that gives the Scrum team direction and purpose. Without a product goal, the team may stay busy, but they risk delivering isolated features instead of meaningful product value. Work becomes reactive rather than strategic, making prioritization more difficult and reducing stakeholder alignment. The product owner is accountable for establishing and communicating the product goal, while the Scrum Master coaches the organization to understand its importance and supports the product owner in maintaining a goal-driven backlog. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. Every sprint should move the product closer to the product goal. Whenever an exam option treats the product backlog as nothing more than a collection of unrelated tasks with no strategic direction, eliminate it. PMI expects the product goal to provide the long-term vision that guides backlog ordering, sprint planning, and value delivery. Trap 28. Velocity as KPI. Imagine management tells the Scrum Master that the team's velocity must increase by 10% every sprint. They even decide to include velocity in individual performance reviews. At first, that sounds like a good way to improve productivity, but it's actually the wrong Agile approach. Velocity is not a performance metric. It is an internal forecasting tool used by the Scrum team to estimate how much work they can realistically complete in future sprints. When velocity becomes a KPI or performance target, teams often respond by inflating story point estimates, taking shortcuts, or sacrificing quality simply to make the numbers look better. The metric improves, but the product does not. The Scrum Master's role is to help leadership understand the proper purpose of velocity and protect the team from metric-driven behaviors that undermine transparency and continuous improvement. A healthy Scrum team focuses on delivering valuable, high-quality increments, not maximizing story points. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. Measure value delivered, not velocity achieved. Whenever an exam option uses velocity to evaluate individual performance, compare teams, or set management targets, eliminate it. PMI expects velocity to remain an internal planning and forecasting tool, not a KPI or productivity measure. Trap 29. Hidden impediments. Imagine the Scrum team is consistently missing sprint commitments because they're waiting on another team to deliver a dependency. Everyone knows the problem exists, yet no one records it, discusses it openly, or tracks it on the sprint backlog. The team simply works around it sprint after sprint. This is not effective Scrum. One of the Scrum Master's key responsibilities is to help the team identify and remove impediments. Problems cannot be solved if they remain invisible. An impediment is anything that slows down or prevents the developers from achieving the sprint goal. Whether it's a technical issue, an external dependency, an approval delay, or an organizational obstacle, it should be made transparent so the team can collaborate on resolving it. Transparency is one of Scrum's fundamental pillars. Hidden impediments reduce transparency, delay corrective action, and make continuous improvement impossible. The Scrum Master actively encourages the team to surface blockers early, make them visible, and work with the organization to remove them. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. If it's slowing the sprint, make it visible. Whenever an exam option ignores recurring blockers or relies on informal complaints instead of transparent tracking, eliminate it. PMI expects impediments to be surfaced, discussed, and addressed so the Scrum team can continuously improve and maximize value delivery. Trap 30. Stagnation. Imagine a Scrum team has been using the same definition of done for the past 2 years. Since then, the product has become much more complex, new security standards have emerged, automated testing has been introduced, and deployment practices have evolved. Yet the definition of done hasn't changed. This is not effective Scrum. The definition of done is not a static checklist. It is a living quality standard that should evolve as the product, technology, team capabilities, and organizational expectations evolve. As the team matures, the definition of done should become more robust by incorporating improved engineering practices such as stronger automated testing, security validation, code quality checks, performance testing, or deployment automation. The sprint retrospective provides an ideal opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect whether the current definition of done still reflects the level of quality needed for the product. The Scrum Master facilitates these discussions and encourages continuous improvement, while the developers and product owner collaborate to strengthen the definition of done when appropriate. For the PMP exam, Remember this mindset. An improving Scrum team continuously improves its definition of done. Whenever an exam option treats the definition of done as a permanent checklist that never changes, eliminate it. PMI expects the definition of done to evolve alongside the product, the team's maturity, and the organization's quality standards. So far, we've explored the Scrum accountabilities, Scrum events, artifacts, and common exam pitfalls. Now we move into a deeper level of Agile and Hybrid thinking, the logic behind PMI's most challenging situational questions. This section focuses on the subtle decisions that distinguish a traditional project management mindset from an Agile mindset. These are the traps that often appear straightforward but require you to think the way PMI expects. As we go through traps 31 to 40, pay close attention to the reasoning behind each answer. In most PMP questions, success isn't about memorizing Scrum terminology. It's about understanding Agile principles and applying them in real project situations. Let's dive into the next set of Scrum Master traps and strengthen the mindset that helps you eliminate incorrect options with confidence. Trap 31. Rejecting change to product backlog. Imagine a sprint is halfway complete when an important stakeholder discovers a new market requirement. They ask for it to be added immediately. The Scrum Master responds, "Sorry, the sprint is locked. No changes are allowed." That sounds reasonable, but it's not entirely correct. One of the biggest exam traps is confusing the sprint backlog with the product backlog. The sprint backlog represents the developer's current forecast for achieving the sprint goal. It isn't casually changed by outside stakeholders during the sprint. However, the product backlog is different. It is always evolving. New ideas, customer feedback, defects, and changing business priorities can be added, refined, estimated, or reordered at any time by the product owner. The Scrum Master should not reject the new request. Instead, they guide the stakeholder to the product owner, who evaluates the request, adds it to the product backlog if appropriate, and decides its relative priority for future sprints. The key principle is simple. Protect the sprint, not the product backlog. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. The sprint backlog is protected. The product backlog remains adaptive. Whenever an exam option rejects new business requirements simply because a sprint is in progress, eliminate it. PMI expects new requests to flow into the product backlog through the product owner while allowing the current sprint to remain focused on achieving its sprint goal. Trap 32. The large PBI carryover fallacy. Imagine a complex user story has been carried over from one sprint to the next, and then to another. 3 sprints later, the same product backlog item is still unfinished, and the product owner is becoming increasingly frustrated. What should the Scrum Master do? Many candidates assume the team should simply keep carrying it forward until it's finally completed. That's the trap. A product backlog item that repeatedly carries over is usually a signal that it's too large, too risky, or not well understood. Instead of accepting endless carryover, the Scrum team should inspect why progress has stalled. The Scrum Master facilitates that discussion and coaches the product owner and developers to refine the item by splitting it into smaller, independent, valuable slices. Smaller product backlog items improve flow, increase predictability, reduce risk, and allow value to reach stakeholders much sooner. A good practice is to create vertical slices that each deliver usable functionality rather than dividing work into technical components. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. Repeated carryover signals a refinement problem, not a commitment problem. Whenever an exam option accepts the same large product backlog item rolling through multiple sprints without refinement, eliminate it. PMI expects the Scrum Master to facilitate backlog refinement so oversized items become smaller, clearer, and more likely to be completed within a sprint. Trap 33. The pure Agile only trap. Imagine you're leading a government project where regulations require formal documentation, approval gates, audit evidence, and compliance reviews. The Scrum Master says, "We can't do that. Pure Agile doesn't allow documentation." That's the trap. PMI does not expect project managers to follow Agile blindly. Instead, PMI emphasizes tailoring the delivery approach to fit the project's environment. Agile values working software over comprehensive documentation, but it does not reject documentation altogether. If documentation provides business value or satisfies regulatory, contractual, or legal requirements, it should absolutely be produced. In highly regulated industries such as government, healthcare, banking, or aerospace, Agile teams often work within a hybrid environment. They continue delivering value iteratively while also meeting governance, compliance, and reporting obligations. The Scrum Master's responsibility is to help the team remain agile without ignoring mandatory organizational or regulatory requirements. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. Agile adapts to the environment, it doesn't fight it. Whenever an exam option rejects documentation or governance simply because Agile doesn't allow it, eliminate it. PMI expects Agile practices to be tailored so teams remain adaptive while fully satisfying compliance, audit, and regulatory expectations. Trap 34. The no risk management trap. Imagine a stakeholder asks the Scrum Master, "How does your team manage major technical and market risks?" The Scrum Master confidently replies, "We're Agile. We don't do formal risk management." That's the trap. Agile does not eliminate risk management. It changes how risk is managed. Instead of relying only on a large risk register created at the beginning of the project, Agile teams reduce risk continuously through short feedback cycles, frequent inspections, customer collaboration, and incremental delivery. Every sprint reduces uncertainty by validating assumptions early. Daily scrums expose blockers. Sprint reviews gather stakeholder feedback. Retrospectives improve the team's way of working. Together, these events become powerful mechanisms for continuous risk management. When uncertainty is high, the team may also create a spike, a time-boxed research activity, to investigate technical or business risks before committing to implementation. The Scrum Master encourages transparency, early discovery, and rapid adaptation so risks are identified and addressed before they become major problems. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. Agile manages risk continuously, not casually. Whenever an exam option claims Agile teams ignore risk management because they work iteratively, eliminate it. PMI expects Agile teams to manage risk proactively through empirical feedback, continuous inspection, and adaptive planning. Here's a subtle Agile trap that frequently appears on the PMP exam. Some Scrum Masters believe that the product owner alone represents every stakeholder, making sprint reviews optional for actual users. PMI disagrees. The product owner maximizes product value, but they are not a substitute for direct stakeholder feedback. Sprint reviews exist to inspect the increment with stakeholders, gather empirical feedback, and adapt the product backlog based on what is learned. Without direct stakeholder engagement, teams may build the wrong product, even if they build it correctly. Keep this PMP mindset in mind. The product owner is the voice of the product, not a replacement for stakeholder collaboration. If end users are absent from the feedback loop, the Scrum Master should encourage greater stakeholder participation rather than accepting their absence. For the PMP exam, always choose the option that strengthens collaboration, transparency, and continuous stakeholder feedback. Many candidates misunderstand self-management as meaning the Scrum Master should never intervene. PMI disagrees. Self-managing teams decide how to accomplish their work, but the Scrum Master remains accountable for coaching, facilitating, and removing obstacles that threaten delivery. When a key developer leaves and capacity suddenly drops, the Scrum Master should not simply walk away. Instead, they facilitate discussions, help the team reassess capacity, work with the product owner to adjust scope or sprint expectations, and remove organizational impediments where possible. Remember, facilitation is not command and control. The Scrum Master enables the team to make informed decisions rather than making decisions for them. Keep this PMP mindset in mind. Self-management does not eliminate servant leadership. It makes effective coaching even more important. For the PMP exam, always choose the answer where the Scrum Master actively facilitates, coaches, and removes impediments while preserving the team's self-management. Here's another PMP exam trap that tests whether you can distinguish a project from a product. A product evolves continuously, but a project operates within defined constraints such as budget, schedule, and scope. PMI expects Scrum Masters to tailor Agile practices to the project context. In a fixed-duration regulatory project, the Scrum Master should not behave as though time and budget are unlimited. Instead, they facilitate release planning, prioritize the highest value work, and ensure each sprint delivers a usable increment while staying aligned with project milestones. Agile does not eliminate constraints. It helps teams deliver value within those constraints. Keep this PMP mindset in mind. Agility is about adapting within boundaries, not ignoring them. For the PMP exam, always choose the answer that balances Agile flexibility with the project's fixed objectives, deadlines, and governance requirements. Here's another classic PMP mindset trap. Many candidates assume that because the Scrum Master has no formal authority, they also have no influence. PMI disagrees. The Scrum Master is a servant leader, not a powerless observer. Their influence comes through coaching, facilitation, transparency, and evidence, not positional authority. When organizational impediments persist, the Scrum Master should gather objective data, highlight the impact on delivery, collaborate with leaders, and escalate issues through appropriate channels when necessary. Influence replaces authority. Keep this PMP mindset in mind. A Scrum Master removes organizational impediments through leadership, collaboration, and data-driven influence, not by giving orders. For the PMP exam, always choose the answer where the Scrum Master actively influences change, facilitates improvement, and protects the team's ability to deliver value, even without formal authority. This is one of the most important mindset shifts for the PMP exam. The team proudly reports high velocity. Every sprint finishes on time. Features are delivered exactly as planned. But there is one problem. Customers barely use the product. This is the classic output versus outcome trap. Velocity measures how much work the team completes. It does not measure whether that work creates value. Building more features that no one uses simply increases waste. Success is never defined by activity alone. The Scrum Master should coach the product owner and stakeholders to focus on value-based measures, not just delivery metrics. Ask questions like, are users adopting the new feature? Has customer satisfaction improved? Are we achieving the intended business outcome? The real goal of Scrum is not to maximize output. It is to maximize value. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. High velocity without customer value is not success. Always choose the option that prioritizes outcomes over outputs and business value over delivery volume. A team's velocity has dropped by 30% over the last 3 sprints. The product owner wants the team to recover quickly. Many PMP candidates immediately think the Scrum Master should push the team harder, assign work differently, or escalate the issue. That is the trap. A Scrum Master is not a task manager or productivity enforcer. The first step is to help the team discover why velocity is declining. The best place to do this is the sprint retrospective, where the team inspects its process, identifies hidden impediments, and agrees on improvements. The Scrum Master facilitates the discussion but does not dictate the solution. Once the root causes become visible, the team can decide what changes will improve flow and restore sustainable delivery. For the PMP exam, remember this mindset. When performance drops, don't force a solution. Facilitate empirical inspection first. In Scrum, lasting improvement comes from coaching the team to uncover and solve the real problem themselves. A simple rule can eliminate many wrong answers on the PMP exam. When you see a Scrum Master scenario, ask yourself one question. Is the Scrum Master being active or passive? Many candidates think servant leadership means staying out of the team's way. That's a misconception. A Scrum Master is highly active, but not controlling. They facilitate discussions, coach the team, remove impediments, resolve conflicts, and help the team improve continuously. What they do not do is assign tasks, dictate solutions, or simply wait for problems to disappear. So, whenever you evaluate answer choices, eliminate both extremes. Reject command and control options. Reject passive, hands-off options. Choose the answer where the Scrum Master actively enables the team through coaching, facilitation, and servant leadership. For the PMP exam, remember this simple heuristic: not command, not passive, facilitate, coach, and remove obstacles. That's the Scrum Master mindset PMI expects. This heuristic helps you eliminate many wrong PMP answer choices. Whenever you see a Scrum Master doing someone else's job, pause and ask, whose accountability is this? The product owner is accountable for maximizing product value and ordering the product backlog. The developers are accountable for estimating their work, deciding how to accomplish it, and delivering a done increment. The Scrum Master is accountable for coaching Scrum, facilitating collaboration, removing impediments, and helping everyone understand Scrum. A common PMP trap is choosing an option where the Scrum Master prioritizes backlog items, assigns technical work, estimates stories, or manages vendors and budgets. Those responsibilities belong to other roles. For the exam, always respect Scrum role boundaries. The Scrum Master enables the team to succeed but does not take over the accountabilities of the product owner or the developers. A simple rule to remember is: product owner owns value, developers own delivery, Scrum Master owns the process. Whenever each role stays within its accountability, Scrum works as intended. As you finish this lesson, remember that the PMP exam is not about memorizing Scrum terminology. It's about choosing the mindset that consistently delivers value. Start by looking for the root cause before taking action. Don't jump to escalation or quick fixes. Choose collaboration over control. The best answers involve coaching, facilitation, and direct stakeholder feedback. Always tailor your approach to the project's context. Agile is flexible, not dogmatic. Finally, trust evidence over authority. Decisions should be guided by empirical data, continuous improvement, and measurable outcomes, not by titles or opinions. If you're unsure between two answer choices, ask yourself one final question: which option best enables the team to deliver customer value through collaboration, learning, and adaptation? More often than not, that's the PMP answer.